I still remember the laughter. Not the kind that warms your heart, but the kind that slices through your pride like a knife. The first time I introduced my husband, Daniel, to my family, they smiled to his face but mocked him the second he turned his back. A teacher, my brother scoffed, shaking his head. She could have done so much better. How's a school teacher going to provide for her future? Their words clung to me ugly and cruel, and I hated that Daniel could probably sense it too. Before I go further, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support keeps this channel alive and ensures you never miss a story that will leave you speechless. Daniel didn't flinch at their comments. He sat there, quiet but steady, his soft voice carrying more power than they realized. He asked questions about their lives, smiled when ignored, and never once let his dignity slip. That was Daniel, always calm, always composed. And yet, my family saw him as nothing more than a man who graded papers and collected modest paychecks. To them, a teacher was a dead end. To me, he was the anchor I never knew I needed. But family judgment has a way of sinking into your bones. Even though I defended him in private, their sneers haunted me. At night, lying awake, I sometimes replayed their words. Was I blind? Was I clinging to love while ignoring reality? Every doubt my family planted threatened to grow roots inside me. Daniel would catch me staring, lost in thought, and he'd squeeze my hand with that quiet assurance. Don't worry about them, he'd whisper. They don't know what I know. The insults didn't stop. At family gatherings, someone always slipped in a remark, my uncle saying, "Hope you like living small," or my cousin sneering, "Teachers are broke for life, you know." I bit my tongue until it bled, trying not to explode. But Daniel, he never showed anger. Just that same glint in his eyes, the one that promised he knew something they didn't. Sometimes I wondered if he was planning something, waiting for the right moment to reveal a side of himself no one expected. One evening, my parents invited us over for dinner. The table was heavy with food, but the air was heavier with judgment. "So, Daniel," my mother began, her tone dripping with false kindness, "any promotions on the horizon, or will you just stay a teacher forever?" My stomach nodded. Daniel sipped his water, set the glass down, and smiled. "I love what I do," he said calmly, "but teaching is only part of my life." The room went silent. My father raised an eyebrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" Daniel only shrugged. "Maybe I'll show you someday." He didn't elaborate, and the conversation stumbled forward awkwardly. My family thought it was bravado. I wasn't so sure anymore. That someday came sooner than anyone expected. A few weeks later, we hosted a family barbecue at our home. The backyard buzzed with chatter and smoke from the grill, but I could already hear the mocking tones of my relatives drifting across the lawn. "She really married a school teacher," one cousin said, laughing into her drink. "Imagine that. No ambition, no real money, just chalk dust and lesson plans." I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. But Daniel, he moved through the crowd with ease, checking the grill, handing out drinks, smiling at people who barely disguised their disdain. And then, just as the sun dipped low, painting the sky with streaks of orange, he quietly wheeled out a large projector screen and set it up against the side of the house. "I've been working on something," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Thought you'd like to see." Curiosity made them gather, but skepticism dripped from their faces. My brother rolled his eyes. "What? A slideshow about homework," he muttered. Daniel didn't respond. Instead, he handed him the remote. "Press play." The screen came to life, and suddenly, silence fell. It wasn't a family slideshow. It wasn't even about teaching. It was Daniel on a massive stage in front of thousands of people, delivering a keynote speech about leadership and innovation. My jaw dropped as cheers erupted through the speakers. The camera panned across the audience, and I realized they weren't just parents or students, they were world leaders, CEOs, influencers, hanging on his every word. The clips continued. Daniel on talk shows, interviewed about his best-selling book. Daniel shaking hands with politicians while advocating for educational reform. Daniel standing in front of schools he'd built through his nonprofit, surrounded by children holding up banners that read asterisk, "Thank you, Mr. Carter," asterisk. I turned wide-eyed to look at him. My husband, the man my family ridiculed, wasn't just a teacher. He was a giant living in silence. My family's reactions were priceless. My brother's smirk shattered as he leaned forward, his jaw slack. My mother's wine glass trembled in her hand. My father's prideful expression cracked as the weight of his own arrogance bore down. Even my cousin, who had mocked him the loudest, whispered, "No way." Under her breath, Daniel didn't boast. He didn't say, "See, I told you so." He just stood there with the same calm smile, letting the truth hang in the air like thunder. The man they thought was small was building a legacy that stretched across the globe. For me, pride burned so hot in my chest I could hardly breathe. All the nights of doubt, all the quiet tears, all the times I wanted to scream at my family, they dissolved in that moment. Daniel had never needed to defend himself. He had simply been waiting for the right time to reveal the truth. As the video ended, applause erupted, not from the speakers this time, but from the stunned silence of my own family breaking apart. They clapped awkwardly, some out of guilt, some out of awe, and I saw in their eyes what they would never dare to say aloud. Regret. Regret for mocking him. Regret for underestimating me. Regret for thinking success only wore a suit and carried a briefcase. That night, their laughter was gone, replaced by the heavy quiet of shame. For once, my husband didn't need to prove himself with words. His life, his passion, his impact. They spoke for him louder than anything ever could. And in that silence, my family finally understood. They hadn't been mocking just a teacher. They had been mocking a man who was changing the world.